I am very pleased that with us on the show from Breitbart News, our friend Dr. AWR Hawkins. How are you, sir?
Oh, doing great, Cam. Great to be with you.
It's good to be with you as well. We've got a couple of polls out over the last couple of days. One, I mentioned the media is paying very close attention to. The Gallup poll suggesting that support for gun control is higher now than it was last year by about 6 percentage points. And then there's the poll that came out over the weekend, Dr. Hawkins, that the media is largely ignoring, the Chapman University Survey of American Fears, which I got to say I found really fascinating, even beyond the questions on gun control. I found it really, really interesting to see what Americans are afraid of right now.
Right. No, I agree. You know, if you look at that poll, you find out that not just more Americans fear gun control than, say, mass shootings, but more than twice as many Americans fear gun control than mass shootings. I mean, you know, I was startled when I read that, equally startled to see that there are many other things they fear far greater than they fear a mass shooting. So it tells me the left may be making a mistake by centering or banking so much on the mass shooting message. That's beneficial to gun owners, but apparently Americans are thinking completely different than the left thinks they're thinking.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right about that. I mean, for instance, the number one fear that Americans cited, and it was the only thing to get above 50%, 58% of the Americans surveyed said that they are afraid or very afraid of government corruption, right. Which I think ties into that 36.5% who are afraid or very afraid of additional gun control measures. Right. You know, when it comes to crime, the only crime that Americans are more afraid of than gun control is credit card fraud. Right. You know, the number of Americans who are afraid not just of mass shootings, but of murder by a stranger or mugging or you know, a violent crime, theft even, or kidnapping is far lower. I mean, our concerns, our fears right now seem to be corruption, terrorism, the tracking of personal data by corporations and governments. We're worried about things like biowarfare, economic collapse, and we're worried about our civil rights being taken away, including our right to keep and bear arms. Those are our big fears right now. Right.
Yeah. You know, you had twice as many people worried. Over twice as many people fear Obamacare as fear mass shootings. And nearly twice as many people fear illegal immigration. All of these things are an outworking of government, either the failure of government to do what they've promised or the government's example of overreaching with something like Obamacare that people really fear, once tied firmly to Social Security, will be used to track who owns guns via their doctors, and then eventually lead to some type of confiscation for people who can be declared mentally unfit to own guns. So, I mean, all of this does what you say. It all really flows down from government corruption, and those are where American people's big fears lie.
You know, we saw Hillary Clinton say on Friday, she was asked a question about Australian-style gun confiscations, and she said, you know, this was something to consider. Now, her spokeswoman, Jennifer Palmieri, has sort of walked this back today, saying, well, you know, she wasn't talking about confiscations. She doesn't believe in that. She's just talking about buybacks. Which I think if you listen to what Hillary Clinton said on Friday, she knew darn well what she was talking about. But this is, again, I think a strategy here. Jennifer Palmieri used the phrase common sense twice in one sentence, Dr. Hawkins, to try to sell Hillary Clinton's anti-gun proposals as something that is simply, you know, it's moderate. It just nibbles at the edges. It's nothing to be concerned about, even though she's saying, yeah, we need to give serious consideration to a compensated confiscation program like what they had in Australia.
Right. You know, of course, she leaves out the key word, which is mandatory. It wasn't simply that the Australian government threw up a bunch of money and said, look, if you turn in your Glock, we'll give you $200 or whatever they gave. What happened is it was a mandatory national buyback, and they were buying back guns that they had decided to ban. And so they put the mandatory buyback in place, and it was a way the government could both secure the confiscation, and show its benevolence by giving you what Hillary Clinton called a fair price or a good price for your gun. See, that will not fly. The fact that they had to step that back today tells you a little bit about where the American people are on guns, a little bit about what Hillary and her campaign must have heard once she said the things she said.
I think that is true. And, frankly, I listen, I want to talk more about this. I hope Hillary Clinton continues to talk about her plans for gun control. I hope she continues to talk about what they're doing in Australia because, as you well know, Dr. Hawkins, the president says, well, we need to do what Australia did. Hillary Clinton says, it's worth considering doing what Australia did. In Australia, this gun ban, this compensated confiscation program, has not led to gun control advocates saying, well, our job is done. We can close up shop now. They're actually saying they need to have another one of these gun bans and compensated confiscation programs. They're saying the first one didn't do enough.
Huh. Yeah. Well, that's what you get, as you know, once you open the door. We saw that in Oregon. I don't even have to look across an ocean to know that. In Oregon, I think it was in the year 2000. It may have been 2003. Either way, it's to the point. They required background checks at all gun shows. That was supposed to fix everything. That's all they need. Then what do? Earlier this year, no, we need background checks on every sale. No such thing as a private sale anywhere. See, every remedy they put in is not really a remedy. It's just an excuse for the next step. And that's why the NRA has been correct to fight Joe Manchin's push for expanded background checks. That's why we're correct to write against it. With Breitbart, where I write, we have to fight it because it's insidious.
Talking with Dr. AWR Hawkins of Breitbart News. And again, it would suggest, the Chapman University survey would suggest that this is something that is a major concern for a lot of Americans. Now, Dr. Hawkins, have you thought about how this poll from Chapman University might square with the Gallup survey that was released today suggesting that more Americans want more gun control laws?
Well, I thought it squares perfectly in some ways. It really does. I know they sound like they're at odds, and they are in some ways. But you have more Americans, almost a record setting, almost more than ever, oppose a handgun ban. Mm-hmm. And that speaks to the distrust of government. You also have Republicans, and Republicans are very well aligned on the Second Amendment, understand it well, always have. You have Republican support for gun control falling, not rising. I think that's indicative of the kinds of things that we saw in the Chapman survey. So I do see agreement. I'm not shocked by the fact that Democrats have increased their support of gun control. I'm not shocked because they have been the strong supporters of gun control all along. Nor am I shocked that non-gun owners support gun control at an increased level. They're non-gun owners. I'm not even sure why they should be asked a question on guns. But anyway, so some of what I see, there is a contradiction, but there is the continued turbulence that Americans feel. Whenever they have to trust their government, they recoil, and they don't trust their government, especially when it comes to guns.
Dr. AWR Hawkins of Breitbart. Listen, unfortunately, we are almost out of time, sir, but I appreciate you coming on the program. Thanks for everything you do, and I know we'll be talking again very soon.
Oh, thank you, Cam. God bless you.
You too, sir. Dr. AWR Hawkins writing at Breitbart again about the new poll, the survey of American fears from Chapman University.